What's up, everybody? Axe Wizard here. It's been about a week since I touched this project. I recorded like the first 9 episodes in like a few hours in one night, and pretty late at night, and probably not a good idea because I got myself in a bit of a mess. So where we left off, I haven't touched the code at all since the last episode. So we have a turret that kind of shoots. I think we were trying to work out sector of fire and stuff. But just kind of looking through the code and refamiliarizing myself with it, I think we got a lot of cleanup work to do first. Oh god, I'm out of control. Where even am I? I don't even know at this point. There we go. Anyway, so we need to clean up some of this code. So I was smart and I left some to-dos at the top here. So my to-dos were figure out sector targeting and then refactor the targeting code. But I think we're going to have to do a lot more than that, because looking through this code, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like. So this is why it's so important to do comments in your code, is so I can see what I'm thinking at the time. So for example, we're doing this same calculation here, like 1, 2, 3, 4. If we go to the draw event, 5 times. We're doing that calculation 5 times. That's not good. So yeah, we're gonna clean this up. So what I should have done is I should have stopped after I got the initial part working where you're shooting, where I can specify like the offset and stuff like that. And I should have went back to my planning. Now, if I go back to my planning here, I added a section here called Systems Design, and I added a section called Weapons here. So I'm going to refactor my code based on the ideas that I wrote down here, because I got a basic prototype working. Now we need to refine it and make it clean, and also make it a bit more not as expensive to run, like not as CPU intensive, because while doing a calculation 5 times isn't a big deal, it does add up quickly, especially when we're doing the iteration through arrays. So we're actually doing it 5 times however many times we're going through the array times however many ships you've got. So that can quickly spiral out of control and just be a huge performance dent. So we're going to fix that anyway. So systems design, this is just kind of, I just jotted my thoughts down. So a ship should be able to have multiple weapons. Each weapon a ship has can be different. We already kind of started that process with like my P weapons array. I started this weapons type here in create. So this sort of type here that I documented, this struct full of fields, this was my initial attempt at that. So we need to be able to have some sort of attack timer that controls the rate of fire, the cooldown, the interval between shots. I think that we've got that. I'm pretty happy with how we have that. We've got attack timer max. That's working. I don't see any reason to change that right now. The range, or at the very least projectile expiration, we've also got that. So we have we sort of calculate the range based on the speed and then when it's set to expire. So that works for now. I might keep that. I might change that later. I'm going to keep that for now. We also have what type of projectile does it fire. Now this is something I'm not currently handling very well. So my thoughts on this is does it need to fire like a basic projectile, like a bullet that once it collides, it just does the damage and then, destroys itself? Does it fire a explosive that when it collides, it's supposed to create like this explosive effect that does damage to everything caught in the explosion? Does it just emit a beam that just keeps dealing damage while you hold it down? So currently, I'm just handling just the basic projectile right now. I need to add the capability to do at least explosive. Beam, I don't think necessarily needs anything fancy. We need to handle that type. So I'm going to go through my thoughts on this, and then we're going to work on implementing these. We also have how fast is the projectile travel. We've already got that. We already have our projectile speed, proj speed here. So we've already got that. That's good to go. Is this a primary, secondary, or independent weapon? So my initial thought process for this was I was going to have a primary weapon array of weapons and then a secondary weapon array. I'm just going to scrap that. I'm just going to do one single array of weapons, and each weapon is going to have a certain like type, whether it's primary, secondary, which means left click, right click, or it's going to be auxiliary, which is something else that you press maybe. I'm just going to focus on primary, secondary, and independent right now. So what we need to do is we're going to need to probably just change this to just weapons, because it's not primary weapons anymore. It's just going to be weapons, and we're just going to have all of our weapons, and inside this type we're going to make it so it's going to have all that stuff. So that's part of what we're going to be doing today. Does this weapon fire the same direction as the ship, or is it an independent turret style rotating weapon? That's what I was trying to tackle last few episodes that didn't go well. So we might figure that out today. I don't think that's going to be done today. I want to focus on the refactor to be able to account for most of this stuff. That independent targeting AI thing is going to be difficult. So does the weapon need to be able to specify a sector of fire? You know, on my little ship right now, I have just a little top mounted turret that can shoot 360. But what if I have a huge ship that's got, like, you know, a turret here that can only shoot like this direction? I need to be able to specify that sector of fire. So also earlier I was debating about whether I wanted to be able to have it aim with the mouse, so a turret could aim where the mouse is, or does it have its own AI targeting system? I kind of want to have both, because sometimes, you know, AI is pretty dumb, and you might want to focus a target, and so you might want to override that. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Where is it positioned relative to the ship? Now we do have that with the offset length and offset direction here, but I think I'm also going to change this to store the X and Y of the weapon as well, because we're calculating it 5 times. I just want to calculate it once, and then we're good to go. So I'm going to calculate it once and then store it per step, and that's it. So I think that's what I'm going to do there. We also have how much damage does it do, which we partially have figured out. So inside of our weapons here, we have damage minimum, damage max, which gives us a little range. That's fine. But I also had a thought, like, is it going to be more effective versus shields or just hull damage? So for example, like a laser beam, like a beam target might be really good at like draining a shield really fast, but it might not do much damage to, you know, a ship itself. So I think that could be something cool to add. So I'll try to handle that as well. And then this is a big one that I'm not going to get to today, but it's something I want in the back of my head is, does this weapon, is it meant to inflict any other additional status effects? Like, you know, for example, if you have a beam, is it burning the ship that kind of puts like a damage over time status on the ship that makes it sort of tick damage as you're going? Or acid or EMP power outage that maybe just wipes out shields or something? Or maybe you have a beam or something that leaches power from the shields for your own shields? Or, you know, maybe you've got like a tractor beam that kind of sucks it in and slows the ship down. Could be all sorts of cool stuff that we could add there that could really expand the diversity of your various weapons and capabilities. So that's it for weapons. I also put a brief note about shields here. Really, this is just going to be it's basically just a second health bar that recharges. So you know, that's pretty common stuff. Shields are pretty common thing in games, and what kind of space game doesn't have shields? So we're going to have to add that too. So let's get working on changing this. So interesting. Turret sprite, I forgot I changed that. The sprite of the turret to use. Okay. Oh, first things first, let me zoom in on my code again, because I was editing the videos, and even though I zoomed in, it's still very small when you're watching on a phone, because I watch all my own videos so I can improve. And you know, if I'm not going to watch my own videos, who the hell else will? And I'll be honest, the last two videos, like episodes 8 and 9, were pretty rough. So I'm going to zoom in, and I think this should be visible pretty well. So let's get back to what we were doing here. So we got projectile speed. We're gonna need you know, we'll just do weapon X. I'll set that to be 0. Weapon Y. It's going to be 0. These are going to be updated, you know, by the code. So X, Y coordinates of the weapon relative. Wait, no, that's just the XY coordinates of the weapon. The calculation is going to be done relative to where it's at. So we're going to have to add those. So let me just add these here. Oh, I didn't want to cut, darn it. We'll paste it there. And then we'll go offset length. Boom. And we'll get rid of this comment here. And we will add these here. There. So let's see, we got that. We got damage, minimum, maximum, fixed, true, all that stuff. So I think we also want to work out what type of projectile does it fire. So normally I would just establish types for what you could do, but GameMaker doesn't really allow us to do that. We can set up something called macros, which if we go to help manual, let's look up macro. Macros are simply constant values that are unique, or expressions that evaluate to a constant value. So, why is it showing me the drag and drop stuff? I don't want to see the drag and drop stuff. I just want to see. Here we go, constants. Okay. So what we can do is we can create a macro, which I don't know why they call it a macro. It's basically a constant. So what we can do is that we can define constants that represent the types of weapons that we want. Let's see. A constant is a type of variable that is set once at the start of the game and then never changes. In fact, constant values cannot be changed after they have been declared. This makes them ideal for holding values that are used throughout the game to identify special data. Let's see. In GameMaker language, there are two types of user-defined constant, macros and enums, which are enumerations, both of which are explained below. Also note that any value that is always the same is classed as a constant regardless of the data type. For example, a string or the number 3. Okay. So macros, I know what those are. What about enums? An enumerator is essentially permits you to create your own limited data type with a list of constant values, and they have the following structure. In the following example, we create an enumeration for the colors of the rainbow and assign it to the constants. Okay. So, gotcha. Okay. So I think maybe we're going to do an enum or an enumeration. I think that's better than macro. I mean, really, I guess they're the same thing here. Okay, what's the difference between... Oh, enumeration entries can only be integer numbers or expressions with the previous enums. Okay. So macro is the way to go. Now, what I want to know is what's the scope of the macros in GameMaker? Are they global to where I can just declare them in a file somewhere and then I have access to them anywhere, or do I have to declare them on the object and the object I'm doing, and they only have scope within that object? Because this is something that these are going to apply to any type of ship, not just my player ship, but any type of ship. Also, like if there's other not ships, but like maybe a space station has weapons, you know, this might apply to them too. That's not a ship. All right, let's look this up. GMS2 macro scope. Okay. So they're pre-compiled. So I guess if I set them anywhere, I think that they'll be accessible anywhere. Okay. So enough learning about macros, let's set some. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to make a new script. Create script. And I'm just going to call this one SCR types. And this is where I'm going to hold all of my types. Now, we're going to mess with scripts again here soon, so I'm not going to explain a lot of it right now. I just want to get this type stuff done, and then we're going to use scripts in a more intended manner to write our own custom functions. So for example, I think I might take this, like these calculations here, and just make my own function for them, to just, instead of having to do it a bunch. So I think that'll be better. So let's declare some types. So what we do here is we do macro, and then what we're going to do is we're going to declare, I guess we're going to have weapon type and then projectile type. So let's do, let's see, weapon type. We're going to make this weapon type. Let's see. Let's look at my document again, because I thought about this earlier when I wrote it down here. So primary, secondary, or independent weapon. So let's just do that. Primary, secondary, weapon type, primary. And I think that we can just do a string, and we can just say primary. I think that'll work, right? Yeah. Is unused. Okay, and then we just do macro weapon type secondary, and we just keep doing this for all of our constants that we want to define. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I can always see clearly in the code, because now this is in red, and I also have the advantage of the editor window auto completing for me. So if I was just trying to rely on this, like what if I wanted to change this, and I want to change this throughout the code everywhere, also there's a chance of user error with like typos and stuff like that, and I just want to avoid that. So I'm just defining these constants here, and I can set them to whatever I want. It doesn't matter as long as they are unique. So we're going to do what was the third option? Independent. That's right. Independent. And we're just going to do independent. There we go. So we got some macros. Weapon types. Primary equals left click. Secondary equals right click. Yeah, and I think independent's pretty self-explanatory. So next we'll do projectile types. So let's do macro projectile type. We will do, let's see, what was I gonna do? Basic projectile, explosive, and beam. I think basic, explosive, and beam will probably work for now. Yeah, let's do basic. We'll do basic. Macro projectile. Come on, if I could spell. Type. Then we had what? Explosive. explosive. And then macro projectile type. Oh, not tile. I messed it up there too. Just a type. And we're going to do, what was it, beam? Now, I'm not going to be able to handle beams just yet. That's going to be its own episode, but I'm at least defining these types here. So we're going to need to be able to store these values in our weapon array. So let's go back here. And we're going to want to store what the weapon type is. So weapon type. And we're just going to set this to weapon type. What was it? Primary. And we're also going to have projectile. Also, let's do proj type. And we're going to do projectile type basic. Just to start out with. So let me copy these. Bam, we got that. Cool. Get that in there. All right, so now this determines whether or not this weapon determines how the weapon is used, really. Whether it's left click, right click, auto. I'm going to put etc. just in case we do more stuff with it. Determines what projectile this weapon fires. And I think that's good. So let me scroll this bar back over here. So now that we've got that, that's going to be a big help. I think those are the two big things that we need to do our refactor here. We also want to know... Let's just focus on this basic refactor first. Okay, so we got this stuff. Let me save this. Now, what we're going to do is... So this is a big mess here. So, you know, we're checking if left and we're sorting through all of our weapons here. This is not fun. So what I want to do is I might want to change this to just be weapons. I'm going to save this, and in the step event, I'm going to find anything that is P weapons, and I want to replace it with just weapons. I just did Control F to find, by the way, and this code window lets you do find and replace. So I can just replace next, and it'll keep going through, or I can just replace all. So I'm going to replace all. There we go. So now we no longer have to worry about P weapons and secondary weapons, and we just have weapons. Cool. Refactor phase 1 done. Amazing. So now we already have this this being done here. So we're already iterating through all of our weapons to handle timers and stuff like that. This is happening after we are determining our ship position and everything. So yeah, I think we should be good to go. Cool. So determine if we need to do anything with our timer. So this is where we're going to start getting stuff different here. So update state for our weapons. So one thing that I do want to do is that instead of checking for input down here, I think I'm going to I'm going to copy this. I'm going to check for input only once, because otherwise the way I'm planning on doing this is I would have to check for input like for every weapon. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say var left click equals, and we're just going to do mouse check button. So this is just going to return true or false. So I'm simply calculating this once, and then I can just reference this local variable for the rest of this stuff here. That way I'm not calling this mouse check button like every time, because I don't know under the hood what GameMaker does to do that. I don't know if that is an expensive process or not. I don't know how big of a performance hit that is, but that's something I do want to be aware of. So I'm just going to do that there. I'm also going to do var right click. I don't know why I capitalized that. Right click equals. And we're going to check this to mouse MB right. There we go. So we got left click and right click. Cool. So now, let's see, we did timer stuff. Update our weapon XY. Because remember I said we want to store the X and Y of the weapon now. I don't want to, yeah, weapon X, weapon Y. So I want to update those values there. That way we're not running that calculation like 500 times for a single ship. So I also want to be able to just sort of do this in just one line. I don't want to keep doing that. So I'm going to make another script here. I'm going to create script. And for this script, I'm going to name it SCR weapon POS, weapon position. And so let's expand this out a little bit so we can see better. So let's see, scripts, they're still the same since last time I did this. So we can do something called JSDoc style comments here, which can be handy to document what your function does. So what I'm doing is I'm creating my own function. Now, functions, you know, like GameMaker has a bunch of built-in functions. They're basically just your toolbox that GameMaker provides you, but you can also create your own tools too. So think of a function as like you pass it, think of it like your own personal chef, right? You pass it a bunch of ingredients, it goes and does whatever chefs do, and then they bring you back the finished cooked product. That's what functions are meant to do. So your functions are just little helper tools that you can pass in stuff and you can get a result back. Now, functions in GameMaker work different than most other programming languages do. So normally a function is its own self-contained thing. So as you're looking at this code here, you would have to pass in whatever you wanted to be able to interact with or use to do your calculations. These are what's called arguments. So for example, if I wanted to calculate, you know, if I wanted to take in offset, direction, and offset, what was the other one? Direction and offset length as arguments here. You see these are now yellow like they're local variables. They have access here. So normally I wouldn't be able to interact with offset direction or offset length outside of this. Now GameMaker is very special. If I call this function inside of an object that has these values, these variables, then I would be able to modify them directly without having to really mess with this. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to take an argument called I. And I'm going to put some comments here on how this function is meant to be used. Is intended to be called from any object that contains an array of weapons. And let's see. So what we can do here is we can specify param, and we can say what the parameter is. And we can say param I is going to, this is just basically a number. So we can say I, the iteration of the loop used to determine which weapon we are calculating for. Cool. So now what we're going to do here is I'm just going to copy and paste this code that we've been using here forever. Check this out. So see all these things in blue? These are variables that are part of the object here. Now, in other programming languages, we wouldn't have access to weapons, but since GameMaker is unique and it's a scripting language, whenever you write this script, this function, it's basically like copying and pasting this code like right there inside the logic here. So we could call scr, let's see, weapon position, and I can just put the I that we're currently on, and that would work. So because we're working in weapons here, since we're calling it from this thing here, we have this array of weapons called weapons. This works. Now, this is something that I wanted to point out specifically because I didn't know this was a big deal when I was just learning GameMaker. So I wrote all my scripts, you know, with the knowledge that wherever my script was being called from, I would have access to all the stuff that my object that I was calling it from has access to. You know, when I started learning like real programming languages and learning how to do business logic and stuff like that, that was a big no-no. That's not how that works in real life. So just be aware of that. But GameMaker is lenient with that. Now, this can also get you into trouble though, because if you write a script and you call that script from something that doesn't have this weapons array, it's going to crash the game. So that's why I documented here how this is intended to be used. So now that we're calculating this, we don't need to necessarily store these values. I can just set these directly. So I can say weapons I, and we can do weapon X equals, oops, I messed that up. There we go. So we're setting this weapon X here, and normally, you know, again, we wouldn't have access to this in this script, but since we're calling it from object, this script will have, or since we're calling it from our ship, the script has access to all the variables that our ship has access to. So super cool. So now we can just tweak this, copy, paste, boom, look at that, perfect. So now we calculated this here. So we're setting this here. Cool. So now we're doing our calculation. So now if we scroll back up here to our code, we don't have to do this here. I'm just going to take this out. And what I'm going to do is up here, I'm going to put that here. So every step, we're iterating through all of our weapons. And after we've determined where our new ship, where the ship is on the screen, we're going to be updating the position of all of our weapons too, because, you know, the weapons, we have to update where they are. They're basically attached to the ship. I don't know of a way to just go sort of glue them to my ship and have them stick there. I have to calculate that myself. So this is how we're going to do that. So we're doing that. We're using our script weapon position. So we're good to go there. We've got the X and Y stored now. We updated that, so that's good to go. We're handling our timers, which is good. And then what we're going to do now is, so we've done that, and now we're going to we're going to determine logic based on weapon type, right? So what we can do here is that we can do if weapons.I logic, not logic, what was I thinking? Weapons I dot weapon type equals, and we can do our constant that we defined earlier, weapon type primary weapon that is used with left click. Cool. Left click. So we've got this here, and we can also do if weapons I. Should have just copied and pasted instead of doing it again, but whatever. Weapon type, and we can do autocomplete secondary. There we go. Secondary weapon. I can't type today, holy cow. That is used with right click. And then we can do if. I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'm tired of typing already. Okay. Boom. We can do weapon type is independent. Auto firing weapon. Cool. So now we've got that. So we also still have weapons fixed. So I can still have weapons that aim to my mouse if they are a turret. I'm just going to get this working first with this refactor before we start really going and adding new stuff to it. So if instance exists, target. So first thing that we want to do, we want to determine if we are even clicking. So because if we're not clicking, we don't need to do anything. So let's see. Are we even able to fire? Or are we even wanting to fire? So what we can do is if left click. And remember, since it's a Boolean, I can just, if this is true, then this is basically saying if true, then do this. If it's false, then don't. So if left click, and what we can do here is that if left click, then what do we want to do? So if left click, we want to just basically do this code down here where it's like, are we even ready to shoot? Right? So I think that we can probably just copy this code here and move it here. If left click, and we'll have to indent this. Are we ready to shoot? So we already did our attack timer calculations up here, so this should be good to go. Calculate where to fire from, so we don't need to do this calculation anymore. So we can get rid of this because we already did that calculation and we already updated our variables. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to do weapon damage. I'm going to copy, or not weapon damage, weapons I.weapon X, and we're going to make this at weapon I.weapon Y. There we go. So that's our we're making our projectile there. All that should still be good. We're setting expire, we're setting damage. We need to determine projectile type. So I think that we can just pass that to the projectile, because I think the projectile, like object projectile down here, this will be in charge of handling that. So I'm just going to make a variable called type, determines behavior of this projectile. And we can just make a variable called type, and I'll just default this to projectile type basic, right? So expected to be set when instance is created. So now that we have this variable type here, we can also set this here. So what we can do is that we can specify proj.type Is type a built-in thing? I don't know if that's going to be good. Because type is in red, and that looks like it's taken already. So let's just do proj type. Or let's just do... we'll do p-type. Holy cow. Just pick something, Axe Wizard. Jeez. P-type. Equals, and we'll do projectile type. Nope, we want to do whatever we have stored in our weapons. So weapons, proj type. There we go. Cool. So we've got that. We got speed. For projectile sprite index, we also want this to be whatever we're using for our weapons. So weapons, projectile, am I not storing that? Yeah, we'll store it here too. So we'll do proj sprite. SPR, placeholder pew pew. That's what we'll use for now. So we'll update this. And we'll also update our type here. So we have proj type. We'll do projectile determines which sprite the projectile uses. Bam, save. Cool. So now we can do proj sprite. Nailed it. Since it's fixed. Okay, cool. So now what we can do is that we can modify this a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to indent like all of this stuff here, or de-indent it. I'm going to cut this out. There we go. And I'm going to get rid of this. So if this is a fixed weapon, just fire. And then also I want to be able to determine if weapon is fixed, else. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut this. So let's see, determine whether to fire the projectile at the mouse or where the ship is facing. Cool. Actually, you know what? Aren't we already determining if we have a weapon that's not fixed? We also need to have an angle too. So if it's fixed, fire that. If it's not fixed, then fire it at the angle that we have stored in our weapons array. Angle. There we go. So cool. So we've got that, and after we've fired, set our attack timer to our cooldown. That's good to go there. Cool, so we handled this. I'm going to put a big old fatty to do here for secondary, and I'm definitely going to put a big old fatty to do here for the independent stuff. So determine if we need to calculate a target. So honestly, this all stuff here, this is just a big mess that I ran into. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this. Let's see, how far was this indented? Oh, it's just indented once. So here. I'm going to cut this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this under the to-do. I'm going to keep this commented out, but I'm going to keep this code here in case I want to reuse it for whatever reason. And I'm just going to comment all that garbage out for now because, wow. Let's see, unassigned variable reference. What do you mean? Oh, weapon. I need weapons. Weapons. There we go. We're good to go there. Cool. Awesome. So that's good to go there. Now I already did this, so we can just get rid of this entirely. Yeah, so this is already good to go here. So I think this should run now. Nope. Let's see. Player ship weapons not set before reading it. Draw 0. Oh, right. Line 7. Okay. So let's abort this. Let's go to our draw event, line 7. Array length P weapons. We just want weapons. In fact, what we're going to do here is we're going to do our find and replace. We're going to say P weapons. And we're going to replace it with just weapons. Boom. And then also what we're going to do is we're going to draw, iterate through our weapons and see if we need to draw any turrets. So, draw turret. So we're doing this calculation already. We don't need to, again, we don't need to do that. And it's especially not recommended to do calculations within the draw event. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm just going to replace it with, so XXYY, we can just do weapon X. We can replace this with weapon Y. Save. Cool. I see something wrong with this code too, so I'm going to put a to-do here. Tweak this to draw weapons regardless. Because what's going to happen is that in my placeholder sprite here, where is it? I don't think I still have it up anymore. Tell you what, sprites, placeholder, ship. So in my placeholder sprite here, we drew these weapons on here. We don't really want these to be on here. We want to be able to draw them ourselves. So, like, for example, I should be able to make other weapon sprites. So I might handle that later, but I'm just going to put a to-do on that for now so we can move on. Because I don't want to spend forever on this. Okay, anyway, let's save our code with what we got for now. And see if it runs. Okay, it does run. Cool. Awesome. So now our turret that we had... Oh, that doesn't look right, though. It's not... If you look at it really close, like the turret is being drawn super weird. Like, it's almost like it's being drawn after. Interesting. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to change this ship event, change event, to draw end. I'm going to save it and see if that works at all. No. Okay. Let's change it to draw beginning. Change event. Draw begin. Save. Oh, whoa. That's weird. It's like drawing it underneath. That's not what we want at all. So we're just going to change this back to the original draw event. So what I think is happening here is that we're updating our X and Y, though. Oh, I think it's because this stuff isn't taking effect, like this motion add and all that stuff like that, where we're handling our ship movement. I don't think that's happening until the very end. Interesting. Well, let me look up motion add really quick. Motion add. Oh, here we go. Motion add. It doesn't return anything. Modify current direction and speed of the instance running the code in adding the new values, current values. If you wish to change these values, motion set. Okay, so that's an interesting bug that we'll have to figure out. I think what we might have to do is we might have to move some of this stuff to, for example, this part here. I think we're going to want to move this to an end step event. So if we just add an event step and we do end step, which is after everything has been calculated, update weapon XY. So we'll do 4. Oops, I didn't copy it all. Here we go, 4. So we've got that in our end step, so I should be able to get this out of here. But then we're also doing a lot of other logic based on that, though. And I'm calculating it twice. I don't know if I want to do that or not. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay. All right, it's kind of working. Okay, so I don't even know where I am. Darn it. I also want to make my ship slower because it's going way too fast. So I think I'm going to do acceleration speed like 0.05. I'm going to set this to something super slow like 0.02. I'm going to say max speed is 5. There we go. Let's run this better. This should work now a little better. There we go. Now I can actually control my ship and not fly out of control. It won't be so bad when I implement the camera system to be able to follow my ship, but for right now, it was getting pretty bad. So I also seem to notice that it's like, I guess it shoots straight. So my turret just sort of shoots wherever it wants to go. I need to make it face. Draw the turret. We also need to update the angle in our step event. So what I might do is in my script down here, we're going to set if needed. So this is already too long, but I'm just going to put a to do here. To do handle sectors of fire. So for now, to do for now, just aim at mouse if not fixed. So if weapons I fixed. So we can do is if not fixed. Remember, adding an exclamation point says if not. So if not fixed, then what we want to do is weapon I angle, and we're just going to point it towards the mouse. So we're going to do point direction, and what we're going to do here is we're going to do for the origin XY, we're going to do the XY of the weapon. And then we're going to do mouse X, mouse Y for the target XY. Why did I put weapon again? Weapons, angle, save. So now if we run this, it should work. There we go. So our turret is facing our mouse now. So we do have that little bit of a... We do have that going for us now. So that's good. So that's pretty cool, I think. Come on, get back on the screen. There we go. Now, obviously, the range isn't anything to write home about right now, but slow it down, baby. Here we go. We get that guy. Come on, shoot him. Here we go. Got him. Boom. So we can shoot where our ship is facing, and we can shoot where our mouse is. So I'm going to have to make like a cursor and stuff like that. But so we refactored our code to make this work a little better for now, to make it be a little more cleaner. I think this also runs a lot better. So I'm going to stop it here. And before I get too much more involved in this, I'm just going to stop it here. And in the next episode, we'll see what I do. I don't know if I want to... Yeah, we'll just see what I do. Thank you so much for watching.